So today is a bit of a special episode because I'm in Svalbard. The setting,
the far north, the topic, these forgotten worlds of a territory where no one is born and where almost no humans live. Because, except for short-term visitors like Charles, Gilda, Leo and me, no one lives where we are. In the Svalbard archipelago, located in the Arctic Ocean, there are only 2,700 people, the vast majority of whom live in Longyearbyen, the northernmost town in the world. Which is a place people pass through, a place where people only stay temporarily, because no one is born on these islands, people arrive here. No one is really from here, since it is forbidden to be born here, and this territory remained completely devoid of any human presence until its discovery in 1596. Here, about 1,300 kilometers from the North Pole, in these areas larger than Togo or Croatia, there are slightly more polar bears than people, reindeer and Arctic foxes. And above all, the sun at noon, at midnight and at any hour. Because at this time of year, our star never sets here. It's disorienting. It literally circles around you, so it's constantly daylight. And when evening comes, since night never falls, everyone adopts their own technique to make it come, to silence the light. As for me, I went to bed dreaming of lost and forgotten worlds. Because where we spent 2 weeks, under the ice, beneath our feet, a large part of our planet's past is fossilized. Because hundreds of different rocks have been discovered in Svalbard, telling the story of an archipelago that has traveled halfway around the globe. Before reaching these latitudes, part of these territories formed in the southern hemisphere, then for a time lay at the edge of immense mountain ranges. They spent millions of years underwater, at the equator, before continental drift slowly carried them north, where they formed a single continent together with Europe and America. They joined with Scandinavia and Russia, then collided with Greenland, before breaking away and ending up largely trapped in the Arctic ice.
I don't know if you can see it, but right here on the rock, we clearly have a fossilized leaf imprint. This is the kind of treasure you can find in the local mines or in the geological layers of Svalbard, which span hundreds of millions of years.
All these memories of times past are recorded here, beneath the surface of these inhospitable lands. Here, people have been able to unearth fossils, the first land plants, trilobites frozen in stone, and primitive fish. Distant relatives of all vertebrates and dinosaur footprints, iguanodons and allosaurs. Herbivores and carnivores walked on this land, and somewhere around here, others swam and died. Gigantic marine reptiles, such as plesiosaurs or ichthyosaurs, from the Triassic, Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Everything is here. The lands of Svalbard are full, beneath these windswept landscapes, of countless remains from another time. Paleontologists have taken from this treasure chest the remains of tropical beaches, abundant marine fossils, brachiopods, corals, sponges, ammonites, bivalves. So many memories of a lush marine life, which beneath the archipelago are found alongside fern forests and meadows, swamp cypresses, white walnut seeds, fossils of metasequoia and ancestors of ginkgo biloba. A tree whose last remaining representatives now only grow in the tropical regions of Southeast Asia. Here, under the thick layer of snow that the reindeer struggle to move in order to reach some moss or grass, we find traces of ancient fossilized jungles and deciduous forests. Dating back to a time when Svalbard was part of the same continent as Europe and North America. Today, the wood for the utility poles is imported, and the nearest tree is located about 1,000 kilometers away in northern Lapland. In the more recent geological layers, dated to 55 million years ago, fossils of alligators, turtles, and types of lemurs have been discovered. Extinct species that lived there and somehow had to adapt to the midnight sun, and especially to the polar night, though we still don't know how. Because at that time, when the climate was warmer and more humid than what we know today, Svalbard was already at latitudes of 60 degrees north. These stretches of ice haven't always existed. And the thousands of landscapes and species that these areas have sheltered have much to teach us. They help us better understand the history of our planet. But some of these buried memories make this treasure chest a kind of Pandora's box. Because some of this organic debris, buried in the ground for millions of years, has transformed, traveled through time to reach us, and ended up in human hands, in the Arctic and elsewhere in the world, in the form of coal deposits. Those discovered on these islands were exploited for the first time at the beginning of the 20th century. We were able to enter one of the many abandoned mines scattered across the archipelago. And it's rather strange to think that here, 1,300 kilometers from the North Pole, there are buildings constructed to extract the remains of an era, the Carboniferous, when tropical climates, mangroves, and swamps thrived in Svalbard. Walking through the corridors of these structures is fascinating. There's a kind of aesthetic of ruin here, tinged with a Wild West atmosphere. And the atmosphere that emanates from these barracks trapped in the ice seems to come straight out of an old black and white western. Set somewhere deep in Arizona at the beginning of the 19th century, yet this mine is actually located near the pole and was only closed at the end of the 1970s. Since the Industrial Revolution, we really haven't made much progress, just like in the days of the first furnaces. The main source of energy for our so-called modern economies. Coal remains, which covers 30% of global energy needs and is responsible for nearly 40% of greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels. Then there is energy, gas, oil, and yet again coal, extracted and burned in vast quantities. Homo sapiens has achieved what usually only the movement of tectonic plates, volcanic activity, or meteorites are capable of accomplishing, namely changing the climate of a planet.
And when you think about it, it's still strange to think that this mine, which today is
buried in the
snow, will, in fact, in a few decades, surely end up exposed to the open air again. Because of the mining of the coal it helped extract from underground.
Ground. Over the past 100 years, most of the glaciers in the archipelago have retreated, and even though Svalbard is still 60% covered in ice, that number is decreasing by 10% each decade. The glaciers we visited may one day be nothing more than ancient history. In the far north, this disappearance is well known. And the threat comes from the south, from fossil fuel consumption, and also just a little bit from Longyearbyen itself. Because the northernmost town in the world is full of paradoxes. Like our modern societies, it is a bit bipolar. Here you'll find a surprising number of cars that I would describe as size matters. Even though there are no roads outside the small town, and almost all travel on land can be done by snowmobile. Yet living here means being on the front lines to observe the changes that are coming. Because the Arctic region is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world and is the region most affected by warming in the near term. In Longyearbyen, the thawing of the permafrost, those lands that remain constantly frozen even in summer, sometimes to depths of several hundred meters, has accelerated in recent years. In summer, the thaw now weakens the structure of buildings, some of which have started to sink. In the far north, permafrost may be a ticking time bomb. A bomb covering an area 20 to 30 times the size of France. Because these permanently frozen soils, which make up 25% of the land in the northern hemisphere, contain a lot of organic matter trapped in the ice. When they thaw, these soils make this matter accessible to certain bacteria that love it, and they will break it down and ferment it, releasing trapped methane bubbles and emitting large amounts of carbon dioxide. The total amount of greenhouse gases contained in these soils alone exceeds the combined reserves of oil, gas, and coal on the entire planet. Thus, with the thawing of permafrost, a vicious cycle could well begin. The gases released by the thaw will accelerate warming, which in turn will speed up the thawing of the soils. And then, to top it all off, this thaw could bring back to life creatures much smaller and more dangerous than the most fearsome dinosaurs. And maybe they're still there, right under Leo's feet.
Alright Leo, yesterday we saw you walking on graves that date back to 1916 and this island is largely covered in permafrost. Could you explain to us why it's not necessarily a good idea to dig there? Or maybe it is? What we need to keep in mind is
it's that living organisms, when they're frozen, aren't necessarily dead. Especially unicellular organisms, they can be very resistant to freezing and remain in spore form for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years. Actually, we don't really know. We don't really have any data on that. And so, potentially, many bacteria or viruses that are in the soil are still alive and could be reactivated if the soil thawed. That's it. The big fear is that ancient diseases could resurface with the thawing of the permafrost, especially smallpox. There are cases of people who died of smallpox and were buried in permafrost. The Spanish flu, which is one of the epidemics that killed the most humans after the First World War. It killed between 50 and 100 million people. And here in Svalbard, there are a few people who died of the Spanish flu, and the virus is probably still somewhere in the ground. You also have cases of anthrax, so the bacteria responsible for anthrax. In 2016, it caused an outbreak among reindeer, and this outbreak was transmitted to humans. One person died. There are also bacteria that we don't know about. There was a researcher who got sick in 2017 while digging through the remains of a seal, so there is actually a lot of activity in these soils. The thing is, this activity is currently slowed down, but once things warm up, the activity will start up again, and actually it's a big question to know what's underneath. And it could be completely positive things, or it could be extremely negative things for us. Here we're facing a huge unknown.
The good news is that maybe one day it will be possible again to die in this archipelago, or more precisely, to be buried there. Because since the 1950s, a law has forbidden it due to the lack of body decomposition at these latitudes. Here, only the living are allowed to stay. Afterwards, if we don't bury people there anymore, we put seeds there instead. Because the island hosts a bank designed to preserve the largest collection of seeds in the world, to ensure crop diversity and safeguard part of our planet's plant biodiversity for future generations. It's there, in the far north, just a few hundred kilometers from where the fossilized remains of one of the oldest forests in the history of the world were discovered. In a region where flowers are so rare that picking them is forbidden, where nearly 1 million varieties of different plants are preserved 120 meters below the surface, using the temperature of the permafrost as a natural freezer. The kind of vault you would rather never have to open. Ironically, this structure, designed to withstand natural disasters and the havoc caused by humans on the surface, recently had to be reinforced after an unusually warm summer caused the access tunnel to flood. Today, Svalbard continues to slowly drift northward due to the movement of tectonic plates. It is believed that in about 50 million years, the archipelago will be located at the geographic pole. In the meantime, everything here is likely to be overtaken within a few decades by the realities of climate change. To try to understand the geopolitics of the poles, where a race for resources and power struggles is unfolding as the ice melts faster, I highly recommend the episode by Leo, whose channel deserves to be better known, and to dive into the surprises, whether good or bad, that climate change has in store for us. Go check out the one by Gilda, who needs no introduction. Unless it's the other way around. As for Charles, a senior reporter at Brute, Human for a while, that's Brute. He turned our journey into a report on Brute and has his own channel, on which he tries to report on part of the state of the world. Subtitling red pillow. Subtitling ear pencil, he forgot to say. It's tough, it's heavy, it's jumping on the bed. It's really heavy. Are you ready? That's not true. I'm great. What did you just do? You're ballade mentale. I pretended to do a sexy shot. I don't have a donkey's tail, just letting a dog loose. That's nature for you. Here, nature. Here you go, nature. We hate you. Can I do a crappy shot? Yeah. Actually, you can't. What were you saying about covering other people's shots? So I'm getting a shot of him. Something for. And I have no idea what I'm going to say, actually. It's great, because that's what it's like, right? Not writing your script in advance. How do you feel? Cold? Freezing? I don't know. All the adjectives that go with it. Hello, I'm tough. I'm full of things.